Welcome to Rucks, Balls and Oval Balls. We are at episode 8 of the fans' favourite podcast. And yes, we may be a day late, but by no means are we $1 short, because we are coming with some serious rugby nerdiness. As always, I am joined by our good friend, Rory. Rory, say hello to the listener.
Hi, listener. How are you? Lovely to hear from you again.
Just to remind you once again, you can't hear the listener.
I can, and I don't care what the doctors say.
Yes, episode 8, Rory. We've nearly made it to double digits.
8 weeks in. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. Where can we go from now? Episode 9?
That seems the logical next step. But yes, as I mentioned, we are actually operating a day later than usual.
Would you like to explain to our listener why?
Well, I will explain to our listener why we're a day late. Is that my continued poor health with my gallstones? Nothing else other than gallstones. The gallstones. Yes, it's been hampering me a fair bit, and it's hampered me over the weekend and the start of this week. So it's not been ideal for preparing for a podcast. But please be reassured, this means that in just 6 days' time, you'll be getting episode 9. There's a silver lining. There's a silver lining for you all. But yes, it is with my sincere apologies that we come a day later than we would like to. But that doesn't mean we won't be coming with all the same rugby nerdiness we would have done if we'd done this yesterday. But before we get into that, we have to do a little bit of mundane banter.
Fantastic.
Now, Rory, please tell me about your weekend in Bristol.
Well, obviously, you were unable to join me for any of the time in Bristol, so the Armob boys weren't there in force, but certainly they're in spirit. I spent my Saturday in a fabulous little boozer in Clifton called the Whitmore Tap, drinking Guinness and watching the two Six Nations games, and off down at King Street to enjoy the sights and sounds of the Bristolian public and a little bit of music. Bristol being one of my favourite towns in the country, so always pleased to go there. And then Saturday, trotted on down to Ashton Gate with a slightly fuzzy head and watched the A game. So, lovely weekend, for which I've been paying for the last 2 days and having to immediately get back to readdressing certain weight issues that have plagued me for, how old am I now? 32 years. So that's been a bit of a challenge the last couple of days, but well worth it. Thoroughly enjoyed myself, even without you there, David. Nice to see a few old mates and have a few jars watching the game. But all round, quite a nice time. Obviously, you got nothing to update other than sort of curling up in a ball in pain, presumably.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I can't sing any praises about my social life. I have been curled up in a ball in my pajamas, not really enjoying time. But, there's some who may be listening who might find some joy in that because they were getting sick of my lavish socialising.
You've been punished for your social ways in recent weeks. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's all come crashing down. But we'll bring that to a mundane end for our mundane banter. And we've gone back to form on our mundane banter being particularly mundane. Thank you for that, Rory. So, the podcast ahead. So, we're going to be going deep into the 3 Six Nations games. We're going to tell the listener what we thought of the 3 games, the implications, what it means, and maybe some of the wider things going on around the repercussions of those games and whatnot. Rory will give us a little update of the A game that he attended. There will obviously be a segment around the DPRFR at the end, maybe a Q&A or two. But let's not hesitate much longer, Rory. Let's just get straight into it. Let's go deep. Let's start big. As England fans, this was a huge game for us. Big build-up. England versus Scotland.
Yeah.
It
finally came home.
Tell me about this game and what your thoughts were, Rory.
Well, I think what's really pleasing about it is England fans can be back to form about complaining about wins rather than complaining about losses. So there's a lot of backlash on England's performance on Saturday. There's a lot of talk about Borthwick and the England attack. Some of the criticisms warranted, and we'll address it. What's been lost in some of the chat is that England have turned around 5 years of bad form against Scotland to win the Calcutta Cup. Whatever you say about how they got there, and I will start the topic by saying then, were I a Scotland fan, I too would be a little aggrieved with some of what happened. But as an England fan, I'm delighted that we're closing out some of these games, even if it is by the skin of our teeth.
Mm.
And I'm pretty thrilled to have the Calcutta Cup back in the cabinet.
Well, yeah, well, absolutely. You have to remember for Test match rugby, the be all and end all is winning games. As much as you like to hate it, or fans love to hate it, sometimes performances take the back foot, and end result is paramount. However, I share lots of frustrations, purely down to the style of rugby.
Yeah.
We will go to it. I feel it's a good place to start. What were your thoughts watching that as a fan of rugby, in terms of, was it a spectacle to be watching on national TV for, say, a neutral? Was England an exciting team to watch?
It was an exciting game to watch. So were I a neutral, that would be the starting point, right?
Mm.
And it was exciting as an England fan in as much as it was very tense, as test matches tend to be.
Yeah.
So tick, as far as I'm concerned on the 2 points. For some clarity, by the time the game kicked off, I'd been in the pub for 3 hours.
Okay, that provides useful context.
Yeah. So when I did have to go back and watch quite a lot of this game because my notes did stop after half time.
Yeah, did your notes sometimes account for there being 25 players on the pitch rather than 15? And while they were wearing clown shoes.
Yeah. I don't remember there being 4 teams.
Yeah.
So watching this in the pub with, and it was busy, and it was lively, it was good natured, but it was very clearly a Calcutta Cup match. It had that kind of feel of it, in the way that actually I think Scotland's resurgence, you really have to credit them with making the Calcutta Cup an exciting event every year, because there was a while when we were younger, where this game wasn't really the fixture in the calendar it probably deserved to be, because there were some years where the Scotland team struggled even against objectively not particularly good England sides. So from a spectacle point of view, I'm absolutely happy with it. I think if you were going to take the England team in isolation, I wouldn't disagree with anyone's assessment that England are playing a pretty limited brand of rugby at the moment. That's fair.
Yeah.
I think some of the criticism is a little harsh. I think there is an attempt to play. I see more of a lack of accuracy than a lack of ambition sometimes, although there's a bit of a balancing act there. I think there can be a little bit more ambition at points, but I think it's due to a lack of accuracy. I think their passing accuracy, their rucking accuracy, their decision making aren't good enough consistently to build that kind of multi-phase attacks. So one of the stats that came out was the number of phases that England managed, number of multi-phase passages England managed. And getting past 3 phases was a real struggle for them. There's a massive drop-off in the number of +3 phase instances that they had. And the one time they went to, I think it was 14 phases, Tommy Freeman scored a try. So the proof is there that when England go multi-phase, they can score tries, right?
Yeah.
And I would place a decent wager, if you were to go back through the stats over the last year, that a bigger proportion of England's tries come from multi-phase attacks than maybe we realise. So I think England can do this. I think the frustration is that what you're watching on Saturday was a team in Scotland that were very comfortable in multi-phase attack and very comfortable with running attack moves off the cuff. So, I mean, the last try is a really good example, right, where it's initially a good strike move, but then Stafford McDowell's break actually comes off resetting and performing effectively another strike move mid-attack. And that's something that England aren't really able to do at the moment. They can do strike moves. You saw it at the end of the first half, when Ollie Lawrence threw the big Hail Mary into Rosette.
Yeah.
But then what they're not so good at the moment, and where they really need to layer some attack in, is getting into an attacking shape that creates line breaks once they've gone beyond 3 phases. Because at the moment they get to 3 phases, and if the attack's slowed down or broken down, which it frequently does because of their lack of decision making, lack of ruck accuracy, the ball gets slowed down. They just default to box kick because they're not comfortable getting into that next stage of attack by running another strike move. So that's where I think the disconnect is at the moment. I don't think that it's a lack of ambition. I think it's accuracy, and I think it's a fear of getting back into multi-phase attack once it's broken down or slowed down.
do you not think it is a tactical decision to go to the box kick so early? Or do you think it literally is because there isn't that ambition to go to multi-phase? To me, it looks like it's a tactical decision because of the frequency of it happening. That there are numerous moments where it felt like the right thing to do would have been to go and play rugby, get the ball out. But quite often, forwards getting in, forming that caterpillar, Alex Mitchell does a box kick. I think he did about 12 box kicks in the first half. Do you not think that's a tactical decision more so than lack of ambition?
I think there is a tactical decision in certain areas of the field to go to the kick and chase more readily because you can see for this England side that they are much more comfortable in defence than attack.
Well,
so
we'll get onto that.
And there are issues in the defence, but you can see that generally speaking, they're more comfortable without the ball than with it.
Yes, but at the moment they are,
I think that's an accuracy issue.
Okay, because I also had issue with that. If that is a tactic, for me it felt naive to assume we would dominate an aerial game against Scotland, considering the size of their back three.
Well, I think that's a question that Borthwick really has to answer because Tommy Freeman once again excelled and once again stuck two fingers up to your assessment that he's not an aerial player. But Ollie Slytterholm and Marcus Smith really struggled with this. And it was really, the first half was really, really obvious with this, right? The Scotland back three was very strong in the air. Yeah. And Marcus Smith and Ollie Slytterholm in particular both struggled.
Yeah.
And the question Borthwick's going to have to answer is, are you selecting a team for the tactics you want to play? Or are you not coaching this team to play in the way they should be with the personnel that's available? Because if you're going to play the game that playing they were on Saturday, I would argue that Tom Roebuck is a much better selection than Slytterholm.
Completely agree.
I would even argue that bringing Freddie Stewart back in would have made a lot more sense for Marcus Smith.
Completely agree. With that game plan, completely agree.
And actually, with that game plan, they may have been more effective. You could probably argue that it wasn't Mitchell's best day kicking, but then how much of that is his kicking accuracy and how much of that is the personnel chasing the ball?
Yeah.
So there's a lot, it's a lot of different factors that go into that. At the moment, it seems a bit muddled thinking with tactics, selection, and decision-making on the field. So, because at the moment, they're so incongruous, I think it's difficult to pinpoint which of those is the biggest issue. Is it they've got a tactic, but Borthwick has selected the wrong team to fulfill the tactic? Is it the tactic isn't to play the way that they are for 80 minutes, but the players on the pitch are afraid to be more expansive, even though they've been given the freedom to with that selection. Ollie Slytterholm, I think got the ball in hand once.
Yeah, very quiet. And
the best of the world, Ollie Slytterholm is a really, really good player. I really like. He's bugger all use if you don't put the ball in his hands because the man's
yes, 100%. There's no point having him on the pitch if you're not going to give him the ball.
It's not, he's not there for any other reason. He scores tries. So if you don't give him the ball, bugger all use having him there.
Yeah.
Or is the issue that they've got the personnel, they've got the tactics, all that's in place, and then on the pitch they're just making the wrong decision at the wrong time? Is that a consistent problem? Now, they won the game, right? So
yeah, so it's a weird backdrop to the conversation, isn't it?
It's a very strange problem. It's very difficult to square that circle at the moment of selection, tactics, decision making, and you won the game when you lost a lot of games last year, arguably playing much better rugby.
Yeah, and if I was to put to you 4 weeks ago that we'll be in this position where we'd have played 3 games and won 2 against France and Scotland, I would bite your hand off.
Yeah, I wouldn't have seen it coming. So the honest answer is I think at the moment I'm in a position where I'm going to give, from an opinion point of view, I'm going to give them a little bit more rope because I think those 4 things don't tally for me. So something's going wrong, and it could be 1 or 2 of those things. But one of them that isn't going wrong is winning the last 2 games. As fortunate as those results may have been in many ways, you ride your luck when you can, and they've beaten 2 teams that have had really the measure of them in recent years. So I'm going to give them a little bit more rope on this one, and I'm going to back that there's a problem that's being solved and can be solved there.
Okay.
I suspect there will be changes in the next game, partly because I think they'll be more confident to win the next game, more comfortable, and can maybe afford to look at a couple of different combinations. But I suspect 1 or 2 players may have played their way out of selection and to be honest, I think Sligo might be a victim of this one.
Okay.
Not, I don't necessarily agree with that. I might be more inclined to keep him in, but I think they'll switch things up in the next game, and it might be they double down on the current game plan. You know,
who else do you think might have played themselves out of contention?
Possibly Marcus Smith.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, this isn't something I necessarily agree with, but I think my gut feel is Borthwick's instinct is going to be to double down on plan A. And I think that sees one or both of Stewart and Roebuck coming in, or Daly.
Yes, potentially.
I could see at least two of those go back into the team against Italy. And I suspect if Stewart and Daly come back into that back line, you'll see a very large outcry on social media about Borthwick.
Yes,
but
you will.
I also think you'll see a more convincing result against Italy.
Yeah, I think so. But on the flip side of that, I also think we would see a more convincing result against Italy if Slightom and Smith were retained. Because I think that game suits them more than the Scotland game will. I'd suspect. But I do feel like Borthwick is going to double down. It's whether he doubles down on his team selection as well. Because that's the other thing he could do. He may say, yeah, we won the game. Why would I change things up?
Quite possibly. Yeah. The interesting factor would be to find out where George Furbank is in his recovery. Because I know that was slated to potentially make the last couple of games of the tournament. So, I mean, all that aside, that's the slightly negative view of the game, or the slightly confused view, because actually I'm struggling to entirely order my thoughts on England at the moment, because for all the things that maybe are hard to stomach, we've also beaten Scotland and France. So I find that at some point, it's difficult to tally all those things together. So that being said, what we should probably do is look at the players that really excelled. And I think the props have really come into their own. I think you can say that Genge and Stewart now look like comfortable international props who can scrummage against different teams, either holding the position or being fully dominant. Will Stewart in particular is looking like a hugely improved player. I think Ollie Chesham massively justified his selection. His effort for the third Scotland try to get back and put the shot in on that was unreal. It's a serious work rate. I think it's the first time he's gone. I mean, I know he didn't quite go 80 minutes, but save for 8 seconds of Ted Hill, he effectively went 80 minutes. Ben Curry putting a serious impact coming on early for Tom Willis, who was unfortunate. I thought Tom Willis was playing well up to that point. But Ben Curry is really showing his impact, and Tom Curry, real shame to see him limping off, and I really hope it's not his hip, but it looked like a man with a hip injury to me, was playing out of his skin as well. So those are all real positives, I think, for me. And then Finn Smith is looking game by game like a Test match 10. I mean, his defence was unbelievable. So his kicking was very good. I still think he makes the attack look more cohesive just from his style of play. So there's a lot of positives there. I think there's things to be positive about, but until they start layering on attack, until they sort out their defence out wide. I mean, watching it back today, the first Scotland try, it was so easy to get round.
Yeah. I
mean, Ollie Lawrence missed the hit on Duan, and then Marcus misses his tackle on Tom Jordan.
Yeah.
But they were so stretched so quickly.
It feels really panicky.
It feels like it's not a lack of effort thing, because any team that made over 200 tackles is not lacking effort in defence.
No.
And they're not. There's massive shots going. There's massive double hits. There's massive double efforts going in.
Finn Smith on Tom Jordan. But, I mean, Bernal put some big hits in. Both Curry brothers did. Chesham did. Henry Slade, I thought was good. There's some real good things being done there, but then they're so easily broken down by a pass back inside to Stafford Maddow, or we saw it in the Ireland game, James Lowe just coming up from blind and breaking in between two players. When teams get into their multi-phase attack, we just seem to get stretched so quickly. We bunch on one side of the field, and then all teams have to do is swing it wide the other side. And when you've got players as good as Finn Russell against you, you can't afford to do that. You have to fill the field. So you and I are both props. Our natural position isn't to always fill those wide channels. how important is it to have a really vocal fullback to make the back line aware of where the dangers are? Because the angle I'm going at here is Marcus Smith identifying the dangers and making the rest of the backs aware of where those dangers are, creating this potential area? Because it seems to have been very obvious in the 2 games Marcus Smith has played fullback. And this isn't me digging Marcus Smith out. It's me. Is it just the fact that this isn't his natural position?
Well, I think what you see, I'm not sure that's the issue that you have with Marcus Smith there. The issue you have with Marcus Smith there is how easy, and you saw it with Alex Mitchell as well, how easily they're shrugged off in defence in a one-on-one tackle against a big, strong outside back. I think that's where the weaknesses of the defensive system are at the moment, because they get isolated very quickly. I think what they're missing at the moment is a forward who's naturally more comfortable in wider channels, because the wrong players are getting caught out there. You know, too often you're seeing Genge or Cowan Dickey caught out wide. You know, someone like
Ted Hill.
Well, Ted Hill, I think, is the natural one for that, because if you look at, so Scotland have Dempsey and Ritchie, who are quite comfortable out there, whilst Rory Darge goes hunting. Ireland have Peter O'Mahony and Kenan Doris, both comfortable out in the wide channels. France have 4,000 6'3" back rowers they can pick, but someone like Boudon or Jalanche or Cross, they're all Aldrit, Olivon, they're all comfortable in wider channels.
Yeah.
Even Italy have Canone or Negri, who are comfortable out there. At the moment, Curry goes off chasing. Fair enough, that's what Curry does. Bernal goes off chasing. That's the kind of player that Bernal is.
Tom Willis, bottom of a ruck somewhere.
He's being tasked, but he's there to make big hits on big players, which he does well. But Chesham maybe could do that, but I don't think he's quite athletic enough to do that for 80 minutes. It's not Marrow's game. No. It's not Cowan Dickey's game.
So we're missing muscle out wide, basically. The guys who can operate in those channels.
Pacey play, it's something someone like Courtney Laws did tremendously.
Yeah.
Someone who's rangy and, is built like a tanky middle distance runner, so just someone who can just chase things up and down the pitch all day and is comfortable tackling a winger one-on-one. Yeah. So that is where someone like Ted Hill, I think, is a really strong option for that, because I don't think Cunningham South's that guy. No. And at the moment, so many forwards are getting drawn into the battle of it, and they're putting in massive shots, and it's really spectacular to see, Curry and Earl or Chesham was doubling up on people and absolutely landing shots. But if you then don't slow down the ball and the ball gets swung wide, and you've got Cowan Dickey one-on-one with
Doohan,
Hugh Jones or whatever it might be, the result is fairly obvious. So
inevitable.
Again, I think it's potentially a selection issue in this case, where you're selecting players. I feel like Borthwick likes to select people based on super strengths. What's the thing they bring to the game and select on that. And it's not necessarily a bad impulse, but what it potentially does is it misses out the combinations argument. Yeah. And I think at the moment the combinations aren't right. No. For my money.
No, yeah, so I think that'll be an interesting one for next week, maybe, because I think there's some interesting back row selection headaches potentially for Borthwick. Say if Tom Curry is injured, Tom Willis went off early. So it'll be interesting for this, but we'll go into that next week as we build up to the next round of Six Nations. But in this game in specific, let's also talk about Scotland a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So, I don't know what your thoughts are. They obviously will be absolutely gutted to not have won that game for a lot of reasons. Winning the try scoring battle 3-1, losing it on the last kick of the game, a few ref decisions that really didn't go their way. Yeah. But what do you think you say to them as Gregor Townsend now after a result like that?
It's a tricky one, because I'm a man of statistics, as is well documented out there. And if you were to look at the statistics of that game, pretty much every single metric, bar the actual score, Scotland dominated England. Yeah. So performance-wise, on paper, they had a good game. It just didn't lead to a winning result on the day, which sometimes happens. I'm often an advocate that not always the best team wins. Sometimes rugby can be won in funny old ways. So if I was Gregor Townsend, I wouldn't be beating myself up too much. I'd be pointing out to the Scotland team that effectively on that day they probably were the better team. They were far more dangerous in attack. They looked really solid in defence. The set piece was strong. Jamie Ritchie was absolutely incredible at the breakdown. So
what an arse to play against.
Yeah, absolutely. As an Englishman, hate him. As a Scottish person, which I'm not, what an absolute workhorse and the sort of guy you want on your side. And you have to put it as well in the backdrop of all the injury problems that Scotland have had going into this tournament. The performances they're still putting out there is credit to them. And as you said at the start of this section, the fact that this is now a competitive fixture year in, year out, got to take stock and look at the bigger picture. Scotland are a force to be reckoned with. And it just in this fixture, as sometimes goes in sport, some of the things just didn't bounce their way. And considering you have a funny shaped ball, sometimes the bounces are really odd. And yeah, the ref didn't help. Did Tommy Freeman ground the ball? The referee was certain. Did the referee move Finn Russell's place kick to a slightly harder angle? Maybe he did. That's the referee. Yeah, he definitely did. But that's for the referee to answer. Scotland can only play what's in front of them, and I thought they played really well.
Yeah, they did. I think if from this game, I think from an English perspective, they've got to be careful that this doesn't paper over the cracks, and they look at this really critically.
Yeah,
and I think you can do that after a win, right? You can potentially be more critical of yourselves and harder on yourselves about specific things, and take that on as an improvement. You know, it's nice to improve from a winning position. I think that from a Scotland perspective, it does expose a few cracks. I still think their wider squad is not strong enough in general, and I think, you know, they're going to have to find a way to get 23 players in the squad of a more consistent quality.
Yeah.
But it's also a reminder that this is not the time for them to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think the Ireland performance was poor. They were really poor against Ireland, and they were pretty unconvincing against Italy, to be fair. But they were really good against England and probably didn't get the result they deserved.
Yeah.
What they have to do now is back that up.
Yeah.
And if they can back that up against Wales and not let that be a banana skin, then give France a good game as well, and that could be game of the weekend. Then, you know, it'll be a disappointing tournament for them, but you have to put it in the context of performance to some extent as well, and say, look, there's a lot you got to work with, and there's still a lot to like about that kind of thing. You know, just looking at that starting lineup now, just rule over that back line.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Is Hugh Jones in contention for being one of the most improved players, say, over like a 5-6 year period? I remember him being at Harlequins and really not being that impressed by him at Harlequins. He was good, but, you know, he felt like a solid domestic level player. He is incredible in the 13 shirt for Scotland.
I think it shows what a player can do
in the right environment.
In the right environment, and given the opportunity to play to their strengths in a team that's well coached and playing to the team's strengths.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you say about that Scotland team, and whatever the criticism about Gregor Townsend is, whatever criticisms there are about Gregor Townsend, that Scotland team is coached to their strengths.
Yeah.
Now, whether they've got, you know, I don't think they've got the 23 to play to their strengths for 18 minutes consistently.
No.
But that game plan gets what it can out of that team at the moment. And they play to the strengths of we've got a phenomenal back three, we've got great centres, we've got a phenomenal fly half. Let's play to those strengths. We pick a pack that can run with them, and we do our best to hold up the other team in the tight, and more often than not they do. But I think taking those two teams in isolation at this moment in time, that Scotland team looks much better coached than that England team.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Yeah. For me, that seems like the obvious difference between the two sides. England were a side they were unquestionably putting in the effort, unquestionably trying their hardest to execute a game plan that they thought maybe worked. But again, we've spoken about it in the past. I think from England's perspective, it's that lack of a plan B and a plan C that's crept back into it. Scotland, they had a game plan. It worked. They stuck to it. They played to their strengths, and I think that huge difference in the statistical metrics is why you see well-coached sides generally win more games.
Yeah.
Because that's usually what happens. It's because the well-coached sides has those strike moves that will break the line. They have the game plan that has the right players in the right positions at the right times, and the pods and the systems and the combinations all work in harmony together, which means that you take advantage of when you do get those opportunities. England aren't in that space at the moment, I don't feel.
No, I don't think so, and I think that's a problem the coaches are going to have to solve sooner rather than later, because results tend to follow performance, and for some reason, England results have turned at the point that performances have become worse, and I'm not quite sure how that's happened.
No,
but the two elements have been there in the last year. We've had the performances.
Yeah,
we've now got a couple of results. Can we marry that up into a consistent team that goes on a run? But it's not impossible. It's just we've got to see it now, haven't we?
I've read some interesting comparisons, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a Saints fan, but they're saying how England have now found Finn Smith, where he is very clearly a big hitting, defensively solid 10. And every single strong run for a nation towards a World Cup or a title has been led by having a hard-hitting, defensively solid 10. Johnny Wilkinson, 2003, Dan Carter, Johnny Sexton, like Stephen Larkham. Like, these are all 10s who hit and defend hard.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting time to see if Finn Smith keeps that shirt, because, as you said, what happens when George Furbank's back? But it's a big question mark for me is when George Furbank is fit. Does Marcus Smith take the 10 shirt back just because he's Marcus Smith? But that's a question for another day.
At the moment, England won.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. England won.
That's the rest of it.
Come on.
The rest of it.
England won.
They're 2 from 3. They've still got a chance of winning the championship.
Yeah,
they're going to have to go some in the last 2 games and put in some good performances. But they won. They beat Scotland for the first time in 5 years. I'm fucking thrilled.
Yeah, there's a trophy in the cabinet. Come on, England.
Come on.
It's coming home. It's going to be 4 out of 5. Come on, let's be positive, people.
Come on.
We're a positive podcast if you ignore the last 30 minutes. Okay, so that game. So we'll round up on that game. So it ended 16-15 to England. Incredibly tense, incredibly tight. A great game to watch if you really like close, dogged battles, which is kind of more of what it was, and kind of the last minute kicks and all that sort of fun stuff. So yeah, moving on. Let's talk about a game that I thought was remarkably fun. Wales versus Ireland at the Principality Stadium. The first thing...
Feel the vibes coming out of Cardiff.
The first thing I want to touch on more before we touch on the game itself is how amazing is the Principality Stadium.
When it jumps, honestly, it's the best stadium in the world when it's on form.
I couldn't agree more. I don't think there's a stadium that excites me as much to go visit as that one, because when you go there and it is bouncing, there's not another stadium that matches it.
When Land of My Fathers comes on, it's what I get the prickle on the back of the neck again. It's a phenomenal place to watch the game. It's such a phenomenal atmosphere in Cardiff when there's a positive feeling behind the team, and I really hope that continues now. Results are relevant. I think if that team keep playing in the manner they did on Saturday, you'll see that positivity breathe back into the Welsh public.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll give them a bit of momentum to go on and correct some of the wider issues. But I was really thrilled.
Wait, Rory. Are we about to say some positive stuff about Wales?
Yes. I hope your ears are pricking up, Griff and Owen.
Oh.
Yeah. I was thrilled for them for a number of different reasons. I think first and foremost, shutting up Irish podcasters who were disparaging about the Welsh chances in that game.
Yeah.
I think I'm absolutely. I hope they had that video playing before the match to rev themselves up. Certain parts of the Irish media need to be very careful of the reputation they're getting in rugby at the moment, because unfound arrogance is meant to be a preserve of the English.
Yeah, back off.
Yeah, that's our thing.
Yeah.
The Welsh attack immediately looks more coherent, more ambitious.
Mm.
They were still playing to roughly the same shape, but they were so much more threatening with it because they were fixing inside defenders. They were moving the ball on in the tips and pulling out the back. They were constantly in motion. They were getting their wingers involved. Max Llewellyn was playing.
Okay. I was timing how long it was going to take Rory to say Max Llewellyn's name. It's taken 3.5 minutes. I'm surprised it took that long.
I can't believe it took that long. I wanted to say it straight away. The forwards were much more effective in the carry. They were much more dynamic because they were moving the ball. They were running angles. They were at shoulders rather than beast people one-on-one, which isn't the strength of that team at the moment. The scrum, this was a day for those of us who love a bit of scrum.
What a day!
What a day!
Yeah.
I'm gonna deep dive into Walgriff John a bit later on.
Oh, I can't wait.
But yeah, the Welsh scrum was phenomenal. I mean, Andrew Porter was consistently being a judge, and Tom Clarkson as well. But they were being reffed, which I think if you've got to be fair, and I say this as a fan of Andrew Porter, and I think if you can get away with scrumming outside of the lines, you should. But Andrew Porter's not always reffed on his angle in the way that he scrums, and he gets away with it a fair bit. And he did a Welsh scrum that had the blueprints of Adam Jones all over it, who is one of my favourite men of all time, inside and out of rugby. I love him. I'm so glad that he's involved in that setup because he's exactly the sort of man you need.
Yeah.
So I was a huge fan of that. Some people will talk about the new coach bounce. I think Matt Sherratt's a really charismatic guy. He's really positive, and you can see that's what he's breathed into the team in a very short space of time. But they've got Gloucester, who's the skills coach. Gloucester has done a lot of work this season. You can see that with what the Gloucester team's doing. But he's, from my understanding, very well respected in the Welsh game. Adam Jones is not only is a Welsh legend, he's a really strong Welsh personality in rugby circles. He's a player's player. He's the sort of person that players really respond to. And you can see that you can't sustain success on vibes. I know I say this as a man who's very vibe based. I understand there's more to coaching than that, but I think it's proof that you can turn around a negative vibe quite quickly with the right voices. And it's clear that whatever was happening under Gatland towards the end, the vibe was totally off, and they weren't getting anything out of players. They weren't getting kind of confidence. There was no smiles on faces. What the new coaching team have brought in, clearly just a bit more joy in the game.
Yeah,
and I think that's infectious. I don't think it's a long-term solution.
No, that wears off.
That will wear off, and there's a lot of things that, and it may not. They may not even get another win. They may still end up with a wooden spoon and be bottom of the table. But I think if at the end of the tournament the Welsh public are looking to go, our first team, they're not just going through the motions. They're not just blindly following tactics. It's their heads up playing a bit of rugby. Jack Morgan scored a good try. Tom Rogers scored a really, really good try. Is it Elliot Mee, the other winger on debut? Just a joy to watch out there. He's come through from the semi-professional game to all the way up to the first team. Good stories. Ben Thomas looked much more comfortable at 12. It's just the players just looked generally more comfortable with what they were trying to do. The players that have struggled in the past few weeks just looked a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
So that's really positive. But let's be frank, they did still lose the game to Ireland, who once again, like they did against England, figured out the problem eventually. And I think this was as uncomfortable as this Irish team's looked since that first half against England.
Yeah,
by some distance. It's probably more uncomfortable even then. Actually, I think Wales put them under more pressure than England did in some ways. But they managed to solve the problem, even though they looked a bit shell shocked. Bundy Aki was phenomenal when he came on. Like proper warrior.
Yeah,
proper
if that isn't his profile picture already, that photo going around, he's missing a trick there because he just looks hard as nails.
I want it on a poster in my room.
I want it on a t-shirt. I want it everywhere. Yes. We'll touch on it a bit as well. The 20-minute red card.
Yeah. I don't think either of us are particular fans of this, right?
I don't mind it in the sense that I'm always pro trying new things. I'm always pro.
Yeah.
However, I do feel like there is a degree of bitterness in that a player who has done for me, what was a clear red card penalty infringement from Ringrose.
Yeah.
The punishment is that Bundy Aki comes on and effectively is the difference maker in the remainder of the game. In that make it a bit more of a bitter pill to swallow from a Welsh perspective, because
Yeah. It's a difficult one, isn't
yeah,
it? Because it made for a really good game, and Bundy Aki was fabulous when he came on.
yeah, and that
So
is
it's
the
not like
argument. That's the argument, is that it means games aren't ruined.
so. From that point of view, Tick has kind of done the job of what they said it would do. I just
Yeah,
don't know if that job should be allowed to exist.
yeah,
Should I, my instinct is still that you should be more punished for a player committing a red card offence, which I'm in agreement. I don't think it's as ambiguous as some people are making out. I think it was a poor tackle. He put in a big shot that went high and he went head to head.
yeah.
I don't think it's.
Well, I said it was a red the second I saw the replay,
Yeah, I
so I
don't think
wasn't
it's
surprised.
ambiguous. So
So I get the idea of trying to make the game more entertaining, less games ruined by early red cards. Is the 20-minute rule the answer? This is probably a bit of evidence that goes into the no column. And
yeah,
as we saw in the first round of the under-20 Six Nations, where Junior Kapoku went off for England against Ireland, similar scenario, he went off early. Perhaps it's a time-bound issue. Maybe they need to tweak the time of the red card to maybe to half an hour, or to half of whatever time's remaining, or something like that.
well, I mean, it's interesting that a lot of Irish voices that I saw on social media bemoaning the 20-minute red card in that instance were not loud.
Oh, remarkably quiet.
Remarkably quiet in that instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure on it. I'm still not sold. But this is maybe one of those issues where they shouldn't cater to me.
A rare admission.
Yeah, yeah. Don't be wrong. I like to be catered to. I'm pro catering, but I accept that I'm bought and paid for when it comes to rugby.
Yes.
Should law changes be made with me in mind on this occasion?
Well, it's brave of you to say so.
Yeah, well, I'm brave. I'm a brave person.
Well, clearly. But yeah, so I do wonder how the game may have gone in old-fashioned red card rules, because Bundy Aki's performance coming on, pivotal.
Yeah, I mean, he was the best player on the pitch. So Ireland scored on the 7th and the 55th minute, both off Sam Prendergast's 50-22s, or both attacks sparked off that. Ireland just very good at being clinical when they need to be.
Yeah, we've said this a few weeks ago, how clinical Ireland are when they get into a 22, and Sam Prendergast's spiral kicks seem to be absolutely laser focused on 50-22s at the moment.
Yeah,
and it provides an immediate platform that they just strike off of.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of distance between him and James Lowe, the amount of distance they can put on kicks, it's so demoralising for the opposition when they turn the ball over. All issues aside, I think Ireland win that game. And even when Wales are playing really well, even at half time, never really thought Ireland were going to lose that game. But I was enjoying the Welsh putting it up in a bit.
Yeah.
Their ability to solve problems on the hoof and find a way to win is so impressive. Very reminiscent of recent South African World Cup winning sides, I think, which is as high a praise as I can give, I think, in recent years. I'm more persuaded that Ireland might win a Grand Slam. I don't want to say it because I want France to beat them and I want England to potentially win the championship. But
it feels inevitable. It's that word, inevitable.
It's inevitability. It just is.
Yeah, so I cannot wait. I really cannot wait for Ireland versus France. That's going to be such a good game. It's a shame it's not like the dropping event at the end of the...
Yeah, it would have been nice to have it on Super Saturday. But it does make Super Saturday potentially really... If France do something improbable, it does make Super Saturday quite interesting in the...
Oh, on that angle, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Super Saturday could still be really exciting. But yes, I think we're going to talk about France in a moment. But I think that performance against Wales, something that maybe England are drawing upon in their performances, just finding the way to win when you're playing badly.
Yeah, it's getting the results and that inevitability, and I'll keep going back to that word because that I think that would be my headline for Ireland at the moment for the Six Nations, is just inevitable Ireland.
Yeah,
as you say, are England trying to create that where a dirty win is a win, and victories breed success. And then eventually success will breed good performances to go alongside it. Maybe that's where the England mentality is But
I think the difference at the moment is Ireland aim for a good performance and will accept winning badly, whereas England aim for winning badly and then hope to improve on that. Slightly backwards thinking between the two, but that's a different conversation.
yeah,
But I think that the sum up of this game is welcome back, Wales. I really hope this continues. I think your under-20's got a really good result against
yeah,
Ireland, mirroring that performance
yeah.
but getting over the line. So there's green shoots there. There's reasons to be positive. I'm really pleased for them.
And I'm really pleased for Griff and Owen.
Yeah, yeah. This week, we'll eat some humble pie on this one.
Although they did still lose, so...
Yeah, that's true, actually, yeah.
But a quick question before we move on to the next game. Have any players in a Wales shirt played themselves into Lions contention? Beyond Jack Morgan, who I think is an obvious contender.
Well, I mean, Jack Morgan. Yeah, Jack Morgan at the moment is the one that I think looks almost destined for a starting berth at this point. It'd be difficult to look past him. Mickey Smith is as good as any loose head out there.
He's not a bad shout as an understudy to Andrew Porter.
Yeah. Thomas Williams, I think, is still in the top 3 nines in the UK. Blair Murray, potentially. There's not a lot of fullbacks going around, like natural fullbacks.
Furbank.
Matt Hansen. Well, Furbank. The thing is, I'm going on the basis of if you didn't play Six Nations, you're going to struggle to make the Lions.
Oh, okay, fair.
That's my general thinking on it. So Kinghorn, Matt Hansen.
Do you mean Hugo Keenan?
Sorry, not Matt Hansen. Hugo Keenan, Blair Kinghorn. Blair Kinghorn's probably my number one at the moment for that. But
yeah.
You wouldn't say Marcus Smith has necessarily played himself into a 15 shirt for the Lions, have it? Would you?
No, not into a 15 shirt, no.
Freddie Stewart's going to struggle at this point, not starting for England, unless the Lions want to do something very specific.
Maybe outside Bolter.
Outside Bolter, I'm not saying he's shoo-in, but I think he's putting himself in a conversation.
Mm.
Well, so I was going to say Max Swilling next, but I worry that I'm a little bit of a one-hit wonder at this one. In all fairness, having a player who played 12, 13, 14, not a bad option to have on the plane. I will say that about Max.
It's not a bad 22 or 23 shirt, is it?
No.
Depending on your bench split. So that's food for thought. Just be aware, listener, once the Six Nations is done, me and Rory will be doing some extensive Lions and probably talking about the Lions in great detail at some point in the future. So get yourself ready for that. France, Italy, France. Where do you start with this? What a result.
I don't know. I don't want to dig out the Italians.
I don't want to, but when you concede 73 points, it's hard not to.
But the French were so good.
The French were so annoyingly good. And I think a lot of people, a lot of the England fans who will probably be shouting at us over their radios is saying that's what France would have done to England last week had they held onto the ball. Yeah, which I don't think they're wrong.
I think that's a bit fair as a comment, to be honest. Italy started brightly. Menecello's got a really nice try.
Yeah.
They held up well in the set piece initially, at least. They held up well in the maul defence initially, at least. It was just one of those days where everything stuck for France and Italy looked a little bit lost.
They did. They got a lot of injuries as well happened to Italy, which didn't help. Losing Fischetti early on.
Yeah, that doesn't help. But when we had a conversation about Italy a few weeks ago, we talked about where the ceiling is on this team, right? And one of the points is I think this is the team that sets the foundation for the golden generation. And I think results like this is sort of, there's a lot of really good elements, and at times there's really good performances throughout the whole game. They do have this issue in them where when they are playing a really, really good side, they can fall to pieces quite a bit. Obviously, the World Cup against New Zealand. We hoped these kind of performances were. Let's be frank. A couple of years ago, France came to Twickenham and put 50 points on England there.
Yeah.
Wales didn't score a point against them in the opening weekend and conceded 43. This is a France team that has the ability to rip almost any other team apart.
Yeah. So
and they were on it.
Yeah. So the one thing I will say about your golden generation point, did you see the under-20s score between Italy and France? 58-5 to France.
Yeah. Okay.
So obviously not the best weekend for Italy, but I'm still agreeing with you that this is a foundation for the future. This is the start of what will be a very strong Italian generation, I think. So I'm still a firm believer in Italy coming good, and their ceiling being incredibly competitive in the Six Nations going forward. But yeah,
they scored 3 really good tries.
They did. They did. Yeah, but France were just so good.
Wow.
Just
well.
So good.
Leo Barret, I mean, basically coming out of nowhere for most people who don't watch Top 14. I mean, I don't watch a huge amount of Top 14. I particularly haven't watched a lot of Stade Francais. And
the fact he's at Stade Francais and he's got that in his locker, and Stade Francais at the bottom of the top 14. What
not met now. 6'2" fullback, can play fly half.
It is so scary that France have this depth now, that they can put on 19, 20-year-olds who can just fulfill the same role as Damien Penaud or what Thomas Ramos does at fullback. Like,
we don't need Jalibert.
Don't need Jalibert. Like, they just don't need him.
We'll go without Miafu this week, actually.
Yeah, it's becoming quite scary. I tipped France to win their home World Cup because I saw the squad they were building was really strong, and obviously well documented fell short. I think that on current form, the way they're building, and they're currently bringing through this crop of youngsters, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with for some time.
As long as the arse doesn't fall out of it politically, I don't see any reason why this doesn't continue.
So there are murmurings of some financial funniness that I've got from contacts in French rugby.
How close to libelous are revealing these?
Unsure, so I won't go into too much detail, but if true, would rock French rugby significantly. Let's just say, like, there's claims of kind of undeclared payments and unpaid income and players getting paid in funny ways. Sounds awfully familiar to another club, but apparently the extent is rather significant, and the punishment to said club would be basically removal of existence. And it's quite a big team, let's say. It does begin with that letter that you're creating with your hands like that. Unsubstantiated, and I have no actual evidence to hand to suggest anything.
But Ben Kaiser was talking about French rugby the other day because it was in one of the weeks when it was all doom and gloom in England on the surface relative strength of French rugby as a system, right? And he did make the point that French rugby is backed by billionaires, and if they pulled their money out, the arse would fall out of it immediately.
Yeah.
It's not... It's a better system than England, and it's much more stable for a number of reasons. But it isn't.
There's a bit of fragility. There's a bit of fragility to it there because the backbone to it is some very rich people who want to have a little bit of a play thing.
We saw that in England with less rich people.
Yeah, and that didn't go too well for them, did it?
No. So there are some concerns there, but I think. Yeah, your point on the squad they're building, it's scary, right? I mean, I think if you can get Entomac back in the team consistently and keep the DuPont-Entomac partnership going, probably with Ramos at fullback, but I mean, why not keep that? Why not? I mean, why not? Although Thomas Ramos was phenomenal at 10. But the options there are so myriad, they can play such a different way if they need to, that it's difficult to see any weaknesses there. One thing I think that is potentially a weakness is their depth at tight head. It's a very specific weakness. Antonio can't have many more miles left in the tank.
No.
Aldegheri's not 24.
No. We've spoken about Colom in the past.
Slimani is 34. And when England played France the under-20s, they had a big tight head in sort of the shape of an Antonio Colom kind of player who was dispatched fairly easily by George McEachran.
Not George McEachran. He was our friend from university, Ralph McEachran.
Yeah, that's the one. Ralph McEachran. So that's the only weakness there if they can continue to... But the flip side of that is if you've got a Miafu or a Tafi Fanua or a Pasola Tuilagi behind your tight head, that does make life significantly simpler for whoever's there.
It does. Yeah, I always laugh when it shows the weights of the pack, and you can see the French pack is quite often, a full human bigger than the other side's pack. And it's usually just Miafu by himself.
Yeah.
I think that's the scary thing, is that, as you say, Pasolo Tuilagi coming through. He's not exactly small, is he? No. Miafu's still going to be around for a while. So the French pack. I get your point. The depth at tight head is a bit of a problem, but when you've got that engine room behind you, it can kind of paper over that crack a smidge, as long as they're able to keep their spine straight with the force coming behind them as well as in front of them.
I mean, you could end up like a crushed Coke can, couldn't you?
I imagine any tight head prop who's going to be debuting for France over the next 5 years, it'll be interesting to see if their height goes down.
Yeah, I think that'd be an interesting point. How tall were they when they started? How tall were they when they finished?
Yeah, and then we found a new medical solution to anyone who's wishing to get shorter, is just to be a tight head in the French scrum.
Yeah, French spine.
And that's why they all have to be 6'4", 6'5", is because it's just a normal human being wouldn't survive.
Tonio was 6'8" when he started.
Yeah, well, yeah, but we laugh. We laugh because it's unfair how strong the French rugby is at the moment. But interestingly, we do go into saying we still think Ireland are going to beat them next weekend.
Yeah, I do. I just don't see. No, that's not true. I can see a world where France win that game. Right? There's always a point when the French if the French play like they did against Italy, against Ireland, they will give themselves every shot of winning that game. But I just think Ireland at the moment have just got this ability to solve whatever problem's thrown at them, and even that French attack, I think they'll find a way to nullify it.
And I think that's what we saw with Italy is France had a way of getting through Italy, and they were clinical and were devastating with it, and Italy didn't have an answer to it. I think Ireland would figure it out. So if France started playing the way they did, they might score a couple of tries, but Ireland will figure it out, and then they'll have an answer of their own. And I think that's the difference.
I could conceive it being, I could even conceive it being a scoreline similar to England-Scotland, right? I could conceive of it being 3-1 to France, and Ireland finding a way to build a score and winning it through penalties.
Yeah, I can see that as well.
That's something that I can very easily envisage that. But that all being said, it's going to make for a cracking game, and I cannot wait to watch it.
Yeah. We'll do a good build up to that in next week's pod. That's coming in 6 days' time. Reminder for everyone. Yeah. So France. It's the fact that Michael Guillard, the second row, who a couple of weeks ago I was saying didn't look up to test match level, he was devastating. Theo Atisogbe showing why he can just step in and cover for Penaud without there being any noticeable drop off in skill or quality or output, which is a compliment in itself. And they're able to just try these youngsters and be standouts. And then you've got the likes of Biel, Dupont. Like, oh my God, how good was he? He was playing like he had a point to prove.
I mean, sacre bleu. It was, I mean, something like 8 offloads that led to tries.
Yeah, I stopped counting like his assists because it felt like every time he just passed the ball in the 5 meter line, try scored. Picked up a couple of himself as well. Like, I was so glad I kept him in my fantasy rugby team because he single-handedly got, 90 points.
Yeah. I dropped down to second this week.
Well, that's a poor performance from you. I think I finished above you in the round standing, so I'll take that. But we won't talk. We won't talk about the overall position because I'm not doing so well. Yes. So yeah, I think this was a return to the Dupont that we were expecting to see in the Six Nations that we probably hadn't quite seen until now.
Yeah, I don't. On days like that, I just don't know how you defend him. He doesn't play like a rugby player.
No, it's unplayable. Like, you can see the sevens
entirely.
Yeah, you can see the sevens kind of skills that he's picked up, kind of in action. The way he's able to just float around and spot the gap and spot the pass that no one else would in the 15s game.
But what's really impressive is how quickly they react to him. There's a break that Ramos makes at one point. Offload, I think that led to Barre's second try potentially. Can't remember one of the myriad of tries they scored.
There was a few. I can understand forgetting which one.
Dupont picks it up. He then bounces one way, bounces the other, sort of floats about a little bit. No one's able to really lay a hand on it. He keeps bouncing off people, and then Ramos just cuts this fabulous line, just goes right through the middle of the Italian team, offloads it. think back to Dupont, who throws it wide, who then gets to Mo Farn on a nice arc line, who throws out to Bielbarret, who grabber kicks, collects it, and passes back inside to Barrow.
Yeah.
It's just, you just watch it and go, on any other day, that would probably be the best bit of play I'd seen.
Yeah.
And this was like third, fourth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It does almost feel like the skills levels just kind of up a bit when France are clicking. Sometimes I question whether there's two Duponts on the pitch as well, because he always seems to be on the shoulder. He's on the shoulder, gets the ball, gets tackled, and somehow he's on the shoulder again. Work rate, unreal.
If there was ever a team that was vibes-based, it's France.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So a question before we move off of the game for you, Rory, and this is kind of linking Wales and Italy. In the past, in the build-up to the Six Nations, there was people saying, Wales have dropped below Georgia in the world rankings. Welsh rugby's dropped into like tier 3. Does this weekend, where Italy concedes 70-odd points, granted, score themselves a nice few tries against a rampant French team, and Wales putting on the performance against Ireland, should that quieten down those critics out there who are saying that Wales should be replaced in the Six Nations by Georgia, which we all know is a bit of a ridiculous thing that isn't going to happen anyway, but there were people out there saying that. And does this show that it may be Italy and Wales, let's just give them a bit of time?
I think, from my perspective, I think it opens up the conversation more as to why there should potentially be a promotion relegation match, because you've got two teams there that are potentially vulnerable to Georgia. I think last year Italy beat Georgia, but Georgia beat Wales.
They did. So Italy beat Georgia, but it was, and I watched that game, and it was remarkably close, and it was probably the most relieved I'd ever seen an Italian side at the final whistle, because I believe Georgia actually outplayed them on the day, but they did an England on them.
Yeah. So, but they did win. So
but they did win, exactly. Yes, but Georgia have beaten Wales, and I do think...
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, but I do think there is a genuine debate that should be had around Georgia in World Rugby.
Well, I think the debate has to be, you've now got Georgia, Spain, and Portugal have all confirmed their place in the World Cup, I think, now at this point.
Yeah, as long as none of them get banned for player registration issues.
Fingers crossed. If there's anyone who's an admin expert out there, which I am not, can you get on the phone to the Spanish Federation and just ensure they crossed the I's and dotted the T's?
Yes.
But what great to see Spain back in there. Obviously, we all loved watching Portugal in the last World Cup. They were great to watch. Georgia, every time I watch them, are really, really excited. They've got players like Niniashvili are just so excited to watch. The issue is access, isn't it? It's constantly access and the disparity between the Six Nations and the REC, isn't it?
Yeah,
the Rugby Europe Championship. And I understand why they're reticent to open the Six Nations up, because how fragile everything is at the moment, and no one wants to give up the golden egg. But we're playing the short money still here, aren't we, in the game? That's the reality. If we've got to start playing the long money and assuming that the rising tide will float all boats. So if we can open up the REC, and let's say the REC is Georgia, Spain, Portugal, Romania, I'd imagine, and then I would hazard a guess Netherlands, Belgium, maybe, or Germany.
I think Switzerland.
Russia.
I think Switzerland are in there.
Yeah, Switzerland got hosed by Georgia.
They did.
Do you know that?
They did, but I think they're the bottom team at the moment.
Yeah. So it'd be something like that, and then below that, another 6 teams. I think there's a structure there that can build an interesting competition, right? An interesting ladder. And we're just talking about a playoff game, right? We're not talking about guarantees. We're talking about an incentive for the lowest team in the Six Nations to fight for their place, and an incentive for the best team in the next league below to keep on improving. Because if you look at teams that have been good in that league in the past, so Romania is a good example of that, right? Of a team that's dropped from being a team that could draw with the All Blacks in the 80s, early 90s, something like that, to now being a team that, with the best in the world, Romania are not great anymore.
Yeah,
But if you can start creating an incentive and a pathway and a potential to open up, you'd strengthen the World Cup in the long term. You'd strengthen European rugby. You will end up strengthening club rugby, because there'll be a lot of players that get exposed that other teams can start to pick up as well. Plus, you'll strengthen the club game in those leagues. You strengthen the European Cup. You'll make it more interesting. You'll get more TV money. You get more broadcasts. The long-term solution to this is obviously to do that,
Yeah.
but everyone is so frightened of the short-term pain, and I get it. We're fragile at the moment, and it's that the first step's always the hardest, but the long-term solution is so obvious to everyone.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And in reality, I think, say if there was a scenario where Wales were relegated to the REC, if they had to do one season where they're fielding 3 games at home against, I don't know, Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, I think they still sell out the Principality. Because I think people will be interested to see how that goes.
And are you telling me that no Welsh fan would fancy a jolly to Spain or Portugal for
Yeah,
an away match
exactly. And
in spring?
TV
Sounds nice.
Yeah, it sounds lovely. And TV companies don't pick up that tournament. If Wales or Italy are playing in it, I think they do.
Yeah.
So it immediately, as you say, the exposure to those teams immediately increases 7-fold. So I agree. I think there is a long-term view that should be taken here. And it's also the view that I have on the Premiership and this new Tier 2 structure that we spoke about last week. Open it up. It increases the interest, it increases the competition, it creates jeopardy for teams at the bottom of the table. It provides motivation, it creates stories. There's so many things that could be won from doing that.
There are so few closed competitions that draw a wider audience beyond their own sort of sphere. NFL accepted. How many other closed competitions draw a global audience or draw global interest? It's not.
Formula One is the only one I can think of, but I don't think you can compare motor racing to rugby in that sense.
No, I mean the best of the world. Formula One travels around the world, so
yeah,
it's an open competition in that they keep adding different races to the calendar and taking the sport around the world.
Yeah,
admittedly, primarily to oil-rich states. But I just think if you're going to grow rugby as a sport, close competition is not the way to do it. Just seems obvious to me. I don't know. It just seems obvious to me.
Yeah, likewise. At risk of going down a very, very deep rabbit hole, let's move on to your experience of England Day versus Ireland Day at Ashton Gate. That unfortunately I wasn't able to join you at, but I'm intrigued to get your report.
Yeah. Okay. So I was very, very much looking forward to this game for the exposure to a set of players that I haven't seen much of. Some instances, or the potential to see future stars for the senior team, and to watch some. I didn't know a lot of the Ireland players, if I'm honest. So I was looking forward to it. If I'm honest, I was a little underwhelmed.
Okay.
Not because the rugby wasn't good, because it was. England scored some really good tries. There were some really good performances. So I'll just list off a few just off the bat. Just because Max Jomo, I thought looked really good. I think he put his hand up for selection. Ollie Housewood-Collins was excellent. Charlie Atkinson was excellent in fly half. Van Poortvliet looked very good. Alfie Barbary, George Lockett,
Tom Lockett.
Tom Lockett, sorry, I apologize. I'm bad with first names. Apologies to everyone. Fizzalau, very good when he came on. Hendy was really excited in flashes, as he always is. The Ginger Flash,
fantastic.
Will Butt is very direct, but he's very effective. So lots of good performances. My takeaway from this, there was a few takeaways that I had from it. So firstly, 8,500 people at the game, which as a number is not bad, but Ashton Gate's a big stadium. Ashton Gate's it's about 25,000. Bad choice for the game. Should have been a smaller, more intimate ground.
Yeah.
Admittedly, it would have made it more difficult for me to get to, but something like
the Rex around the corner.
King's Own's just up the road. Yeah, potentially a chance to use six ways again. Sitting quiet. I know Newcastle had the under-20s, but maybe opportunity to take the team on the road to Kingston Park or the AJ Bell. Missed opportunity there, I think, potentially taking it to Bristol. I understand that from a logistics perspective, there's a reason why they did it, but I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And what I also came away from and so the atmosphere suffered from that, suffered from the weather. Bristolian weather is what it is. What I came away from it thinking was there's work to do with this as a system. There's real potential in what the A teams do, and I think we have to get back to an ambition of having a second tier competition between don't call it the Six Nations, call it whatever you like, but the lack of stakes makes it.
As a spectacle, does it suffer?
it just doesn't feel important
Yeah.
when you. I do it's sending to me, and and I get it's to players. I don't want to denigrate what the opportunity gives to players, and I'm sure they enjoyed it and enjoyed being in and around that setup. So I don't want to take anything away from them on that because they get to put on the England shirt and they get to experience something different. And look, I think that's really important. What it felt like to me was if this was a team, Six Nations, with all the nations putting out a team like this and a genuine competition there, and like the rookie league that we talked about,
Yeah.
maybe make it an under 23s or under 25s. I don't
Yeah.
there's a different way to do it, but if you had stakes in this,
Immediately
it's
becomes more interesting.
it suddenly becomes interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to make millions for anyone, but as an opportunity to take teams on the road
Yeah.
to different stadiums, to different parts of the countries, and that goes for all. Goes for in Wales you could take it down to Cleckley or to Swansea. In Ireland you could take it down to Munster or up to Ulster. France you take it all over the country. Italy. There's an opportunity to do something here, but I think it needs stakes and I think it needs organisation.
Mm.
I'm glad they're bringing it back, and I know the RFU have talked about pushing this more, and I hope they do it, and I hope they're able to get other teams interested in this because this feels like the zenith of an idea that needs to be built upon, but without stakes, it's a bit like watching some of the Prem Cup games
Okay,
at the moment.
so I was wondering whether it felt like when you go watch like a charity football game.
No, it doesn't feel that inconsequential.
Okay.
It doesn't feel quite that inconsequential. It feels more like there's something on this, but it's not quite tangible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something in it because, as an England A player, an Ireland A player, you're putting your hand up to go, look at me. It's like Kieran Frawley for the Ireland team. It was putting his hand up and played well, by the way, to say, hey, don't forget me just because of the new lads who've turned up.
Yeah.
So fair enough. And a number of players in the England A's team did that. But it's not tangible. It feels like watching a trial game.
Right.
But so there's stakes there for the players.
Yeah, but not for the
But
fans.
the stakes for the fans don't feel quite there.
Yeah, so you do wonder. Well, you do wonder if there is like a competition that should be created around this. Maybe because I'm not sure Italy would have the player base to kind of put a competitive side out. But maybe just do a five nations rookie league or home nations rookie league. I don't know.
Right. Yeah,
just something in the background.
Is it something you could bring in one of the REC teams into, like an invitational side every year?
There's an idea.
Or go a bit further afield. Could you invite the US or go, like the old Churchill Cup as it was years ago?
Oh yeah, the Churchill Cup.
So that's kind of my thinking. I think that it's really good to get these players an exposure, and I think some of them would put their hand up. And I don't know if Borthwick was at the game, as I was on the other side to where he would have been. So I never saw who was watching from the senior side. They'll have been interested by this, right? Barbary looked a lot more like a player who could potentially step up to international rugby. Max Ajomo very much looked like that player to me. I think they'll think about Joe Carpenter as a fullback option. But if you want this to be a consistent thing, you want this to be a going concern, there has to be some stakes there for me.
Interesting. So yeah, it's interesting that you talk about the Churchill Cup because I remember watching that when I was considerably younger. Maybe that's something that needs to be revisited. Because I remember enjoying the Churchill Cup, and thinking that was a good competition, and that creates a purpose around the England A team. I guess the other angle is we don't want it to be a case of there are players that are continually called up to the England A team, put their hand up for selection, but for whatever reason that seems to make no difference to Steve Borthwick and the selectors, because then the players might start to lose that interest as well. I think, as you say, there are stakes for the players. But if it starts to feel from the player's perspective that all these guys who are playing really well still not getting selected, where their stakes start to diminish a little bit.
Well, it depends how you do it. I think if they say, okay, we're going to select the players that have graduated from under 20, haven't made the senior setup, maybe even haven't really established themselves in the club game as yet, or are just starting to. So we say anything from 21 to 25, something like that. That's the band of players we're looking at. And we're gonna give them exposure.
Yeah,
we give them exposure to a international setup. against stronger teams than they're playing against at the moment, particularly before the rookie league gets established.
If it does happen.
If it does happen, even.
Yeah.
So that's where I see the value of this. And maybe you have a couple of wild cards who are a bit older. I'm not going to argue with there being an 18 captain or something like that. Fine. But I think there has to be something more to what it's trying to do.
Okay.
And I realise this. Basically England have brought this back for 2 games. They got one game against Australia, and one against Ireland, and no one else has a regular setup here. And maybe
there's a game against France in June as well.
So
they're trying to make it.
Yeah, I want it to be a thing.
Yeah, and I feel that the RFU are trying to make it a thing. You need opponents. I guess that's the difficulty. Hopefully other unions will see the benefits that we see, and hopefully it does turn into something more tangible. And as you say, that feeling of purpose for the fan to be watching England Day, getting more than 8,500 people coming to watch it, which actually is probably a good number. I've got my own feelings about Ashton Gate. I don't think it's the best rugby ground. But yeah, I think there's something there. It's too big, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm still pro England Day, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I'm pro it. I just want there to be something they're doing with it. I don't want it to be like a ad hoc invitational side. I want it to be a developmental side with stakes and a trophy and a reason for fans to get behind it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. But do you know what time it is, Rory? I hope everyone is ready, because it's time for everyone to rise, because it is time for the address to the nation from El Presidente of the Democratic People's Republic of the Front Row, Rory. Rory, what do you have for your people today?
I thought long and hard about this, and I feel like it's time we open up the myths and legends of the DPRFR, the wider culture. So,
for the listener, the president has placed his very, very snazzy spectacles upon his presidential face, and he's about to address us all.
I've got the bins on. So, long ago in the DPRFR,
this feels like story time.
Yeah, there's the ones. What I want to talk about this week is the hero's journey.
Okay.
And the narrative up of a true hero. And I think we saw that in spades at the weekend from 2 individuals. And it's the arc of those players that go through the mill a little bit in the public eye, or don't get the opportunities that maybe they should have done at the right time, but finally come good and get their moment in the sun and get their flowers. So the players that I want to honour this week at the DPRFR are 2 magnificent tight-headed performances of Will Stewart and Will Griff-John, who, for different reasons, I think deserve all the plaudits this week for the journey they've been on to become heroes of their respective nations. Will Stewart, I think, has been at times unfairly maligned for his performances in England's shirt, but he's certainly been questioned as to whether he's international quality. Well, if there were any doubters before, there shouldn't be any now. In this Six Nations, and I think in the autumn before, he's put to bed, I think, any doubts about his scrummaging ability with a series of excellent performances for England. He's in phenomenal shape. He's got lovely hair and gorgeous facial hair, which I'm always in favour of.
Fantastic.
Lovely legs.
Any other compliments for Will Stewart?
Just a nice personality. But his development as a prop to the level that he's at now, I think, has been phenomenal. And more proof that props develop later. And you do have to show some patience with some players. And I think he's truly stepped out the shadows of Dan Cole before him and established himself as the premier tight head for England.
Couldn't agree more.
So I'm really thrilled for him. But the real hero of this week was Will Griff-John for Wales, looking like a Victorian strongman with his shaved head and big bushy moustache. So Will Griff-John is my age, almost exactly. He's about 6 months in it. He's about 6 months younger than me. He's a player who I've sort of been broadly aware of for a long time. He's bounced around a few clubs. I've seen him play here and there.
Bit of a journeyman.
Never really settled, I don't think. I mean, I think he's had a couple of stints at Sale, a couple of stints at Connecticut. He's been a bit, but he's never really settled. He's never really established himself as a as a consistent professional, and it's so heartening to see any player finally make it into the foreground later in their career and get their opportunity. I'm thinking of Fari for South Africa in the World Cup, who came in to cover at hooker, well into his 30s. Those kind of guys that you see how much it means to them to finally get that kind of recognition. But the fact that he's done it at tight head at this age is going to put him down as into the pantheon of heroes of DPRFR forever.
Oh, fantastic.
He's going
to be thrilled. He's going to be thrilled, I'm sure.
Portraits, statues, national holidays, they're all in the offing. I'm going to have a bust commissioned of specifically his moustache.
Fantastic.
I might get the forehead as well, but
I think
that's really what I want to focus on.
Yeah.
But it's a salute from El Presidente to two players that have been on the hero's journey and now firmly established in the great halls of the DPRFR as rank international tight heads. So all stand to attention, all salute Will Stewart and Will Griff John.
There we go, people. That was the address to the nation from El Presidente of the DPRFR, quite rightfully providing some great honours to some outstanding performances on the weekend from Will Stewart and Will Griff John. And I, as just a pure administrator within the DPRFR, will do everything in my power to ensure that they're aware of these honours that have now been bestowed upon them. That leads us nicely on to Q&A. So Q&A this week, Rory, we've, as has been mentioned, I've not been particularly well, so I've not been able to get out and find some questions and kind of rally the listeners to kind of give us some meaty stuff to tag on to. But we do have a question, and this question comes from Drakey. Remember Drakey?
I remember Drakey.
Yeah, I think it's a question you're probably incredibly keen to answer. The question is, who is the sexiest prop?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, the obvious answer is me.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be your obvious answer, so I'll rephrase it. Who is the sexiest prop other than yourself?
Okay. Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because do you go by conventional standards of beauty, or do you go by propping standards of beauty?
I would like an answer to both those questions, please.
Okay. By propping standards of beauty, well, I like a prop that looks like they've been carved from a mountain, that looks hard as nails, that looks like they could drink, I don't know, a flagon of wine? Is a flagon a usual measure of...
I think when you're talking about props being carved out of stone, I think flagon's very appropriate.
Right. So, for that, I might be Slimani.
Wow. Rabah Slimani.
Rabah Slimani. Just he's also French. French is just sexy.
So, you're saying that Rabah Slimani is the propping sense of sexiest prop in the world?
I mean...
Or are you going by conventional here?
He's got a lovely face. He's got a cute face.
Well, there we go. And how about the conventional sense of beauty? There's an obvious answer in my brain. It's got to be Max Laheath, surely. There's no other prop with a rig like that.
Yeah, I mean, Max Laheath did come to mind, and he has got a phenomenal rig.
And just imagine him reading you a bedtime story.
Yeah, I wonder if it might get a bit grating.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe it is. Angus Bell? Good rig on him.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
He's got a good rig.
Remember,
Thompson Toy's not got a bad rig.
Remember, beauty isn't just in the rig.
No, that's true. Facially, I mean, Jamal Ford Robinson.
Yeah. He's a prop I'd love to,
I've got a poster of Jamal Ford signed that I bid for at a charity auction. So
treasured possession.
I've
got a soft spot.
Put it this way, it lives by the bed.
I've got a soft spot for Jamal Ford Robinson because he, like me, is also a nerd. Loves his video games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the fact he's very open about that, I've always got a soft spot for him, and that he's just a unique character and just seems like a real laugh as well.
Yeah.
Which for me is all very sexy in my eyes.
Yeah.
Go on, Jamal Ford Robinson.
That's what I'm going with. My sexiest prop is Jamal Ford Robinson, and I won't be dissuaded.
that is going to be a clip, and we're going to tag Jamal Ford Robinson. But yeah, so that was the only question we had this week, Rory. So unless there's any other topics you wish to cover at this late stage in the podcast.
David, can you confirm that your arse will be attached in time to record next week's pod?
Well, I can't make such promises that my health woes will be completely behind me, because I think I'm in for a little bit of a long haul on getting it all resolved, but I will endeavour to bring the next episode of the pod in 6 days' time.
Excellent.
So we'll be back on schedule. The listener won't have to wait anywhere near as long as they have to for this episode. 6 days is such a quick turnaround. Gosh,
a quick turnaround.
Like, we're spoiling you, all you listeners out there, by giving you one less day to wait for episode 9. But yes, hopefully all will be well and should be back on schedule for then. So yeah, well, in that case, we will bring the podcast to a close for this week. And that obviously means we bring back the jingle. Rory, do you have any final words for the listener?
Jamal, DM me.
There you go, Jamal. See you all next week.